So my name is Tim Rasmussen, and I am the principal of a marketing agency called Rivet MRO, and we focus on co-marketing in the broader industrial space. And prior to starting Rivet, I was the director of marketing for a division of ITW. And in that role, I saw the value of co-marketing, and I saw how difficult it was sometimes to implement, especially with distributors that don't understand marketing or don't have the resources to execute the way you might. So what Rivet does is typically we go to market through distributors. We also work with manufacturers in helping them, on a local market basis, really drive results with co-marketing funds. So we do a lot of co-op and MDF and also traditional co-marketing type applications. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that I can share with you, but especially with this small group, let's make this interactive. So please don't even hesitate to interrupt or to ask a question. Let's make this what it needs to be for you. So basically what I wanted to do was, I'm going to enlarge my screen here. Really wanted to give you some perspective in terms of how it can work. So when I was with ITW, I thought of co-marketing as a pain in the neck, and it was fraught with problems, and it was difficult to execute, and it was difficult to get cooperation from the distributor. And generally it didn't work. And what distributors wanted to do was buy trucker hats and golf balls, and didn't really have the wherewithal to execute, more advanced, more targeted marketing initiatives that were able to drive results. And I'm guessing you're in the same position, but I was constantly in a position where I had to defend budgets, but marketing budgets are the first ones to go, right? And the idea was to demonstrate the efficacy of co-marketing and how we can drive results with it and be able to protect those budgets and therefore protect results. So I'm going to take you through this. This is really more case study driven than anything else. We're going to talk about the hows and the whys with the frustrations with co-marketing just for a few seconds, but I think the time is best spent looking at examples of co-marketing that have really worked and moreover why they worked. So with that, just a quick overview. We are a full service integrated marketing agency focused on the broader industrial space, whether it be with distributors or suppliers. We've worked with more than 100 distributors and more than 500 manufacturers. And we are known as the co-op marketing experts or the co-marketing experts in the broader industrial market. We've got a track record of driving results, and we are also heavily invested in the AD ecosystem. Are either of you AD suppliers? Are we familiar with AD?
Yes, we were one of their suppliers in a previous life, 2 companies ago, I believe.
Okay.
Very familiar.
So if you're not familiar, it's the largest buying group in the industrial space, combined member revenue of more than $100 billion. So we focus, within that ecosystem, and got a strong record of driving results for those. We work in 2 broad areas. So strategically looking at customer segmentation or cross-sell modeling, things like that, voice of the customer research. Those are the strategic resources. And the co-marketing resources are typically more aligned with our tactical resources. It might be print or digital or trade show, that sort of thing. So, co-marketing is kind of like advertising in the sense that John Wanamaker, who was a turn of the century retailer and advertising marketing pioneer, he said, half of the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And I don't think co-marketing existed when John Wanamaker was doing his thing, but you could easily change out co-marketing for advertising. And it really resonates with me that so much of it is wasted. And therefore, manufacturers tend to look away from it and say, this isn't worth the time. It's not worth the hassle. I'm not getting results. I'd rather spend it somewhere else. And if you have that attitude, I don't blame you. But hopefully we can give you something to chew on and show you how you can make it more effective for your audience. So today we're going to look at why manufacturers typically struggle to realize value from trade marketing efforts, and specifically zooming in on co-op and MDF funds. They can be very effective, but they're often underused and misused. Generally speaking, only 40% of eligible distributors that have co-op marketing resources or co-marketing resources available to them even participate. So there's half of the market or more is simply ignoring that as a resource. And we'll look at that. It's really kind of a systemic issue and a strategic issue from the manufacturer standpoint. So generally speaking, co-marketing programs are too complex and distributors don't understand that they even exist. So if they don't know that the resources available to them, they can't leverage it. It's kind of like the lottery. You can't win if you don't play, right? I think one of the biggest things is that we see all the time is misalignment between the manufacturer and the distributor. And we've done some research on this. We'll talk about this at the end. We did a pretty in-depth research study with distributors and with manufacturers about co-marketing, and that misalignment is really a critical thing, and it's a frustration on both sides, but it's easily fixed. So that's the good news. And I think the other thing is it's often treated on both sides as an entitlement, as a reimbursement. In other words, this is something that I've earned, give it to me, and there's no coordination, and they don't look at it as a growth driver, just getting the dollars that they've earned. And from the supplier side, I hated that. I hated pet funding trucker hats and golf balls. I wanted to do a cross-channel campaign that drove results. And so it's a matter of getting distributors to understand that value and giving them the resources with which to execute something like that. So the question is, how do we make it work? Stanley Cup final ended last night. The Oilers have won the cup before, but not last night. So if you're a Panthers fan, congratulations. But the great one said you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And co-marketing is fraught with shots that aren't being taken, both from the distributor perspective and from the manufacturer perspective. And so, we don't just want to put more pucks on net. We want to put them in the back of the net, right? So it's about scoring. So I'm going to spend the bulk of our time talking about examples of where co-marketing has proven to be a great investment. And so we'll take you through some case studies, show you some things, but then talk about it from the manufacturer perspective in terms of why this might, how and why this might be important to you. So the first one is with Honda Power Equipment and a distributor in the Northeast. This particular distributor was construction and industrial in focus. This was focused on the construction markets, and Honda made a job site or a generator that powered a job site trailer for about 8 hours on a single tank of gas. It had all kinds of whiz-gizzy features. It had Bluetooth, and you can run it in series and parallel and all kinds of great stuff. Our client had a lot of customers that had a need for this particular piece of equipment. So we created a graphics animation video and leveraged their in-house list of 15,000 plus customers and prospects who were interested in this type of product. And we published a weekly email for 8 weeks. There were 8 key features and benefits. We zoomed in on one of those features and benefits for each email and always linked back to the video, which is a 1-minute video about the product and why they should buy it from this particular distributor. And then we expanded on that story on a weekly basis with one of the key features and benefits. We simultaneously published the email content on social media, and we were able to drive an increase in generate orders by 300%. Sales were up only 168.7%. The reason for that is we ran out of generators. So we looked at it, we said, okay, didn't expect that. That's great. Was there a weather event? Was there a blizzard? Was there a tornado? Was there something that drove, unusual generator purchases? And the answer was no. This was simple product marketing. There was no offer. There was no sale. There was no incentive. This is, hey, this is a great product. We know you probably could use it, and here's an easy way to buy it. So from a manufacturing standpoint, the reason that this worked is it was highly targeted. It was aimed at a large customer base who already had a pre-existing need for this product. And we were able to quickly focus in on the solution for it. So it wasn't focusing on features. It was really focusing on benefits and the problems that the device solved. So not what the problem, so what's the problem that it solved, not what it did, if that makes any sense. And one of the things we see, we'll talk about this later, is that solution-oriented communication tends to drive a better response than feature-oriented communication. And we made it easy. It was easy to click on the video and learn more about it. It was easy to click on the e-commerce link and purchase the product. And the vast, overwhelming response was through email. We got some traction with LinkedIn and with Facebook, but email carried the day on this. And it was infinitely measurable. So that's why we can get precise numbers like this. One of the challenges that we'll talk about is distributors don't do the best job of tracking results. And one of the things we like to do is execute projects that are trackable. So there's some accountability. We can figure out what worked and why it worked, and therefore do more of that down the road. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them now. If not, I'll keep going.
I just love how simple that example is, Tim, how straightforward it is. We told people about something we knew they needed, but maybe they didn't know they needed it, and they bought it. It was
Right.
not
Sometimes you
that
don't know what you don't
complicated,
know.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, we
It's
got
not
this
that
cool
complicated.
thing. You should look at it because you probably need it. You know, you know, along a similar vein, but a decidedly low tech avenue is this sample box with Mid-State Supply. So Mid-State Supply is both an industrial and an electrical distributor focused on the industrial marketplace. They had a nascent but growing safety practice within that, selling PPE. And they're not a terribly big distributor, so we worked with multiple suppliers to co-fund a box that it was a graphic box with samples in it. We did it, and the idea was to use this to facilitate targeted cross-selling and new account activation. So we did a training program with their sellers. Here's how to use it. Here's how to target. And the key thing is this is old school. This is kind of guerrilla marketing. It is a personal delivery. You set up a meeting and bring it in person. Don't mail it, because we tried it that way and it doesn't work. And we had all kinds of heat, stress, and hydration products. This was timed. This was launched a little over a year ago, and it was launched in early May. And this distributor's in Louisiana. It gets hot in Louisiana in the summer. And so they had bottled water and pickle juice, which is a sodium retention, water retention drink. Squincher, which is, you might be familiar with it, but it's like Gatorade, but it's really focused on the industrial marketplace. And we sold safety sunglasses and cooling towels. It was a focused effort. So, focus is an important part of any co-marketing activity. So we had a focused product selection, and sellers could come in and target end users that profiled as heavy end users of each types of products and sample it. And they're already buying from them. So now just buy this from us. We know you need it. So again, it's a matter of meeting demand with supply. So you work in Louisiana and your guys get hot. We have a solution. And you already love us and buy this stuff from us. So why not buy this stuff from us and just have one PO rather than working with multiple entities? An old mentor of mine used to say, I'd rather be a thief than a teacher. In this case, we're just going to steal this from somebody else because it's easier from a transactional standpoint. We saw all kinds of dramatic increases in sales on a product specific basis. These big increases are with small products, but Squincher was a mature product for them and it increased 20% during this promotion. And we saw 20 to 1 ROI after 1 month and more than 50 to 1 ROI after a year. So looking at it from your perspective, again, why was this successful? Why did it work? What can we learn from it? So first of all, highly targeted. So this is highly targeted based upon this being on focus on heat, stress, and hydration. So therefore we could target end users who had a need to address heat, stress, and hydration. This is really focused on cross-selling. We did see some success with conquest selling with it, new account activation, but cross-selling carried the day. And it was seasonally delivered. Some of our products have seasonality to them. I'm not sure about your business, but clearly it made sense to launch this when we launched it and we saw the traction with it. And it made product testing and demonstration easy. So first of all, we train their sellers on how to do these things, but we also help them get prepared with information about these products. And they were physically in your hands, so you could take this and they can move it into the plant and give it to guys and see what people thought and follow up on it and create that action plan. And so with that, we prepared their sellers to be successful. So it wasn't just, here's this box, buy something if you like it. We gave them immediate, steps to prepare and immediate steps to follow up with, and drove tremendous results. This is another sample box, but it was completely different. This was focused on energy efficient lighting. So RAB is a manufacturer of energy efficient lights. Our client was a lighting distributor in Manhattan, and the utility there, Con Edison, had a tremendous offer. If you bought energy efficient bulbs, we'll give you a 95% rebate. So you're selling these bulbs at 5 cents on the dollar. This particular distributor would, it's going off on its own there. Sorry about that. This particular distributor would help them facilitate the rebate. So they're getting the full price for the bulbs, and Con Ed's paying 95% of it. We had sample bulbs in the box. It was a pretty big box. We generated a 321% increase in RAB lighting sales. It was shooting fish in a barrel. So again, highly targeted. This was aimed at building maintenance managers who probably already had a directive to be more green. And so we demonstrated how we could do that. It was outrageous value, 95 cents on the dollar. We leveraged the distributor's ability to process the rebate. So strange. And again, we made product testing and demonstration very easy. So they had the product there, they could use it right away. Martin Supply is a pretty sizable industrial distributor in the Southeast. They were our very first client, and there was somebody that I had worked with when I was at ITW. And they have a very strategic focus on expanding their digital footprint. So we focus most of our efforts on generating graphics animation videos for Martin Supply. When co-marketing funds are in place, we have some tension. So the manufacturer typically funds the initiative, but it's for the distributor. And we go to the default where we want to use these funds to build the distributor's brand. They're the ones that have the relationship. And so the idea here is that using co-marketing funds, we created a series of more than 40 one-minute graphics animation videos that all have a consistent look and feel. They'll carry the Martin branding, so it's a Martin video about Seco tools or whatever it might be. Consistent voice, branding, music, everything. And we created a series that's become really well known within this particular industry sector. We found that video is a supercharger for search engine optimization. The videos are double indexed for voice and for on-screen verbiage. We try to be strategic about that. And we've seen, the first video that we did 9 years ago is still being used. So it has a really long shelf life. It's an investment in 1 year, but it pays dividends for years down the road. Their sellers use them in field sales calls, in social media. They publish every video at least once a year on their social media. It's on their website in multiple places, and they use it in their email marketing. And they've seen last 5 years on average a 35% increase in organic website traffic. So, typically distributors struggle with digital initiatives. Martin is larger. They're a little bit more sophisticated. But we made we created videos that made the complex simple. Sometimes we're animating processes that'd be hard to video, but we can make it easily demonstrated using graphics animation. And, we gave the sellers instant expertise. Distributor sales reps, they've got 1 million clubs in their bag. This video gives them reason to look at it a little bit more, and it gives them, a consistent message that they can share with their end user and provide some expertise without necessarily having to go to school. The flexibility of it is huge in its success, and there's tactical alignment here. So, one of the things we try to look at is we know distributors, generally speaking, prefer non-digital execution, where manufacturers tend to prefer digital execution. We made it easy for them to execute the digital execution without having to expand their internal resources and leverage that in an ongoing fashion. Another digital initiative is a clickable catalog. In this case, our case study is with DuPont Tyvek. So this particular distributor focused on clean manufacturing, life sciences, and pharma. And they sell the bunny suits and kind of this disposable suits that provide for a clean environment. They had sold through flyers and traditional catalogs, and were just implementing e-commerce. We created a robust interactive virtual catalog that allowed the end user to look at it and to access important information. So here's the catalog. You click directly on DuPont. You can go to any of the others, but you click right here to purchase the product. So immediate purchase, or you could click here to watch a video about the product. So it delivered rich content and it was easily organized. So we saw tremendous, conversion to e-commerce. Most distributors, if they're lucky, have 2%, maybe 3% of their sales via e-commerce. And I know this is probably a strategic objective for you to get more of your products published online. This creates engagement with the distributors. So DuPont had the opportunity to select products that they would put on the website and gain that additional visibility. It had similar executional uses as the video from a digital standpoint. And we saw in 60 days, we saw a 20% increase in overall DuPont Tyvek sales. And then with the really important items, with the ISO clean hoods and lab coats, we saw a 40% plus increase in sales during that initial rollout. So for them, again, highly targeted. We're focusing on on clean manufacturing. And so we're creating that intersection kind of like we did with the generators. Here are people that have a need and are interested in the product. Here's the product, and we're going to make it easy to make the purchase. So there is no sale here. Again, this is product marketing. This is just saying, hey, you need this, we've got it, and we can make it easy. We're focusing on the solution rather than on the features of the product, providing easy access to rich content, some of which you've already provided. You probably have a library of videos that are going underutilized. It makes it easy to access those and point targeted customers in that direction so that you can expand on the story. And again, facilitating the immediate purchase. Last one, decidedly old school. And so, part of it is really understanding how can we be successful with this particular distributor? How do they go to market? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How do we support that and create linkage between the manufacturer and the distributor? In this case, in our discovery with the distributor, we learned two important things. They were in the process of doing an AD conversion with jet air tools. And in our discovery, we learned that their end users are 99.9% male. They're in Texas, heavy into hunting and fishing. So we created a lifestyle offer, this backpack that lines up well with their end user demographic. We also learned that their sellers were tightly managed on the disposition of quotes in the system. So their sales managers look at it and say, is this open? Is it closed? What are the next steps? So we said, let's use a limited budget for a sales promotion. A sales promotion is typically buy X, get Y. In this case, we said, let's make it a step to the sale. If you quote a jet air tool, I'll give you the backpack. Each of their reps got a box of backpacks and a stack of flyers, and it gave them a reason to go in. And it was self-liquidating. When the backpacks were gone, the promotion was over. And we saw program orders double over a 4-month program period. And so again, highly targeted, you'll see a theme here. Oftentimes these things are scattershot and they tend not to work when they're scattershot. So this is targeted for both the seller and for the end user. We're working to drive desired behaviors. It's working to understand their particular sales choreography and drive those desired behaviors within the context of that sales system. So support the process and drive demo and conversion. Here's a reason to talk to me about this. Here's a quote for it. Do you want to buy it? Again, they were showing this to people that needed air tools. So again, it's about supply meeting demand, and it was just easy, self-liquidating to execute. So, if you boil these down, here's what works and what doesn't work. Highly targeted initiatives tend to wildly outperform scattershot initiatives. Simple execution. Most distributors don't do well with detailed rollouts and execution on these things. So we want to make it as easy to execute for the distributor as possible and take as much of it off their plate. If it's needlessly complex, it's probably going to fail. We want to drive the desired behavior. So request a quote, request a demo, whatever that is. Understanding the sales process and using that to advance it, making a sales enablement tool. Focus on solution versus product. Here's the problem that we're solving with this, rather than do you want to buy this thing? We want to advance the selling conversation, work within the existing sales choreography rather than work in a vacuum. Initiatives that work without input from the sales team tend to fail. And collaboration is important, and you'll see this a little bit later when we talk about the research study we did. Both distributors and manufacturers, crave collaboration. And it doesn't happen a whole lot with this. And when the collaboration isn't there, we tend not to get the results. And again, especially from the manufacturer side, measurability is paramount. So ultimately, it's about knowing where you want to go. It's beginning with the end in mind. Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else. And there's wisdom in that. So where do you want to go? So ultimately, we want to help you take advantage of missed opportunities for enhanced engagement, and co-marketing is a pathway to that. We want to drive incremental demand closer to the customer. Your distributors know the end user better than you do, at least their end users. So it's a matter of working to find that strategic overlap between your business and their business in driving demand. Distributors have, literally millions of products that they can sell, and our focus is on helping capture their discretionary selling effort with co-marketing. And this gives you the opportunity to be prescriptive and precise with the application. You get to fund what you want. So to roll out best practices, we want to treat this as a strategic tool, not as a cost center or an afterthought. The idea is to use these prescriptively in a precise fashion. One of the key success factors is starting early in the year in generating that conversation in a timely fashion rather than, I know everybody hates distributors, asking for these things at the end of the year when it becomes a mad scramble. And the thing is, I think manufacturers oftentimes feel like they have to be supremely flexible with co-marketing funds, and that's not the case. You get to decide what you're willing to fund. So it's a matter of understanding your path to market and where that overlaps with the distributor, and only investing when there is that alignment. Make it easy. It's easier for your customers and for you. We've seen manufacturers create all kinds of hurdles and bureaucracy behind things, and it's a barrier to use, and it's an added expense that isn't necessary. And again, it's about finding those shared objectives and tying the campaigns to those shared objectives. So it's about collaboration and being clear about what you will and what you won't do. You get to set the rules because it's your money. And then making content support available, having product photography, product descriptions, videos, things like that are readily accessible to your distributors. And then we can't emphasize this enough, tracking the ROI, working with the distributor, come up with a way to evaluate the success so that we get smarter. We always like to work with a test, measure, refine approach, do something. Why did it work? Let's do more of that. Why didn't it work? Let's do less of that. Shifting gears, this is really kind of to whet your beak on this. We did a pretty detailed survey with manufacturers and with distributors about co-marketing. And this is recent. This was done in February of this year. And this is done within the AD ecosystem. But we got some really interesting insights that might be of interest to you. I'm going to show you a couple of them, but I'll give you access to the full study if I piqued your interest. So one of the things that we looked at was, the vast majority of manufacturers offer some sort of co-marketing. But interestingly, less than 25% of, speaking of co-op funds, 25% of co-op funds are typically claimed or less at the manufacturer level. So there's a lot of unused funds out there and missed opportunity. But interestingly, so manufacturers tell us that less than 25% of funds are claimed. When I was at ITW, it was less than 10%. But despite that data, distributors think that they're using most of what's available. And that tells us that there's probably a disconnect with communicating around the resource. Distributors and manufacturers had different priorities. Distributors want to prioritize events and print and swag because they're easy to execute, don't require expertise, and aren't measurable, so there's no accountability. Manufacturers want digital and email and applicable catalogs because they are measurable and they provide some measure of accountability. The one area of overlap is sales promotions. Sales promotions are old school in execution and don't require digital sophistication, but they are infinitely measurable. And generally, suppliers are more comfortable funding those than they are other types of initiatives. And additionally, we found that there's a tremendous need. Over half of each audience said, yes, we really want strategic collaboration. We want help. We want to work together, but it doesn't happen most of the time. Most distributors have a small or no marketing staff. So it's incumbent upon the manufacturer to create a program that doesn't require expertise and requires very little executional ability on the inside from the point of view of the distributor. So spoon feed them something and they're likely to be more successful. Those distributors that work with a third-party resource tend to claim more and claim a higher ROI. And lastly, and this is no surprise to you, manufacturers almost universally say that they'd be interested in supporting more co-marketing if there's a higher likelihood of a better ROI. Not a huge surprise. So happy to give you a link to that study. And if you're interested, there's also a video presentation of it. So lastly, how do we make this work for manufacturers? Simplify the guidelines and simplify access. Make it easy and transparent. Use it as a gateway to improved engagement. When I was at ITW, co-op was all about the engagement. We get a better relationship with you as a distributor and with your sellers and get better share of mind and therefore greater sales. Support the execution with product communication resources and measure. If you can measure it and you can justify this with your management and manage for better results in subsequent years. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully this was of some value to you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, this was great. I appreciate the content. Very good stuff. And
Thank you.
one interesting thing that you said, which is, the distributors know the end users better than the manufacturers. We happen to be a business that we know the end users 100% better than the distributors do. The distributors are almost, I will not purely, but to exaggerate a little bit, purely transactional. We keep them happy by transacting through them and making sure they get a piece, because we do rely on them to a certain extent, but very little, to hold local stock for us on certain products, which are not job-based products. So I guess looking at it through the lens of a manufacturer like us, does that change the design
Yeah.
of a co-op program?
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Are your sellers instrumental in completing the transaction?
Sometimes we even ship directly to job site and completely surpass them in every single way. But yeah, so they are very transactional and only essential because of the little bit of business they do stock. And there is a partnership there that goes beyond the vast majority of our business, which is we do a consultative sell to the owner, engineer, or a contractor, land the business, drive the specification, land the business, and then where do you want to buy through? We sell through the local fill in the blank distributor, and we transact through them and fulfill the order however it needs to be fulfilled.
Yeah. So I mean, typically what we do in these instances, oftentimes there's an assessment or some sort of analysis that's required in order to provide a recommendation from a product perspective or solution perspective. And so we're driving the opportunities for assessments typically through digital channels, because it's hard to rely on the sellers. The sellers aren't comfortable talking about it. So it's a matter of giving, controlling the message through the distributors' communications channels, talking about why the solution is potentially efficacious for the manufacturer, and creating the conduit to set up that analysis so that your expert can be there to pick the ball up. And it's a matter of leveraging existing relationships to create some visibility on your solution.
Okay. That makes sense.
Good question.
Thanks, Tim. I have a question for Tim, but anyone else have, before I go, question for Tim? Tim, you talked about the idea that manufacturers should probably be providing guidance and guidelines around what types of programs that their distributors run. Can you talk about how prescriptive you should be and how involved manufacturers should be in really setting those things? Is it like on one end of the spectrum, it's, well, here's the things you're allowed to do, and we just give you a list.
Yeah.
And on the other end of the spectrum it's, no, here's the program you're going to do, and I want you to run it this way. So like, where on that spectrum do you see most people being successful?
Yeah. So I've got two answers to that. I'm sorry.
What's that, Spencer?
Oh, nothing from me.
Okay. So when we work with manufacturers, there's kind of three attitudes towards co-marketing. One is, yes, we have a formal program here. We're listing everything. Here's how we're going to support you. Here's how we calculate funds. Here are approved activities. Here are deadlines and forms that need to be filled out, and everything is buttoned up. And that's pretty easy. And with those that are successful, the ones that are very clear about the process and what needs to be involved in terms of what are approved activities, what aren't, and if there are any litmus tests, is there an expectation? So we work a lot with a very large manufacturer that everybody here has heard of, and they expect there to be a 10-to-1 return on sales with any sort of co-marketing funds that they offer. So they're going to reserve the right to choose whether to decide whether or not the request honors that directive. And so they have certain things that they're looking for, but they also have some flexibility where they know this distributor has the ability to execute this and not that. So there are formal programs, and the formal programs need to be clear and need to be transparent and, in everyone's best interest, easy. So if you make it difficult, you're just making more work for yourself and they're not going to do it. So why even offer it? And then the other manufacturers just say no. And distributors often resent that and look at converting that business to those manufacturers that support them. Distributors realize they suck at marketing. They know that they're really good at sales and they're really good at logistics. And if they're leveraging co-ops, or either they're, generally speaking, either they don't do much co-op or they do a lot of it and it's important to them and they measure it and they focus on engagement with manufacturers that provide them with that path to the market. So, it's really about engagement and understanding the distributor at their level and working to define mutually acceptable objectives and supporting those things. So whether that's a formal program or an informal program. So first answer was about a formal program. The second answer with an informal program, you have a lot more control over it, but there's less transparency.
Makes sense. Thanks, Tim.
Does that answer it?
I think so. Other questions for Tim? Guys, thanks for hanging in with us. I hope you all got as much out of the session as I did. And Tim, thank you for presenting.
Hope this was worth your time. Thanks for listening.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
All right,
Tim.
everybody.
Good luck to everybody.
Talk soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.